Committee. I'm Councillor Mark Roberts, chair of the meeting. Our members here today are Councillor Rob Hughes.
Good afternoon, everybody. Councillor Rob Hughes, Vice Chair from Portland.
Councillor Louis O'Leary.
Good morning, Chairman. Councillor Louis O'Leary, Dorset Councillor for Littlemore and Preston.
Thank you. And Councillor Sarah Williams. Thank you. And our three confirmed independent members, Lee Hardy.
Good afternoon, Lee Hardy, independent member.
Philip Thickness.
Hello, Philip Thickness, independent member.
And Richard Tinsley.
Good afternoon, Richard Tinsley, independent member. And
we welcome today our new independent member, Mark Saxby, who is joining us as an observer role. His place on the committee will be confirmed at full council on the 13th of October, so a very warm welcome to Mark. Thanks, Mark. The first item on the agenda is apologies. So, Josh, could you please let us know of any apologies?
So we've received apologies for absence from councillors Dave Bolwell and Mary Penfold.
Thank you. And that there are no other members absent, so those are the full apologies. Item 2 on the agenda, minutes of the Harbours Advisory Committee on the 7th of June 2023. We need to confirm these minutes. Is there any point or anything anyone would like to raise before we confirm the minutes? You've all had a chance to look at them, I think. Is everybody content that the minutes are a true and accurate record? Good. Thank you. We'll confirm the minutes. Declarations of interest. If anybody has any declarations of interest. Yes, Richard.
Yes, I hold a berth at the Weymouth Marina in Weymouth. Yep.
Thank you. And as usual, I have a berth at West Bay, but also I represent Dorset Council on the LGA Coastal SIG, and also I chair the Southern Inshore Fisheries and Conservation Authority, and also on the Jurassic Coast Trust. So if we can note those, please. Thank you. Item 4 is public participation, and we've had no questions from members of the public. So we move straight on to my report, item 5, which is a verbal update. And again, of course, welcome to Mark. We had a very strong field of applicants this round for the position of independent member, and the vice chairman and independent member Lee Hardy with me made up the interview panel. And from this very strong field, we were delighted to ask Mark Saxby to join us as our independent member. On the 17th of July, I was invited to go on a tour by CFAS, who of course are based in Weymouth, the Centre for the Environment, Fisheries and Aquaculture. And partly because their research vessel was in Portland for a few days and had a tour of that and the laboratories in Weymouth. And I think if anyone ever gets a chance to do that, it's really absorbing work that they're doing there. Very interesting. I'm also delighted to welcome today James Hannon of ABP Mer, our designated person, for his first chance to assess the committee, and he will be delivering his report a little later. I also last week attended the Local Government Association Coastal SIG, the special interest group, which we hosted here in Weymouth 2 years ago, many of you will remember that. This time it was in Lincolnshire, in Skegness and Lincoln. And it was an interesting concept. I think all I will say is Weymouth has an awful lot more to offer than Skegness, I think. But it was also the AGM, and we were due to have a paper from a senior MMO officer all about harbour revision orders and why there are delays on them. Unfortunately, he couldn't come. So we are none the wiser, and it was a great shame because there were many local authorities who really wanted to question, who have harbours, who wanted to question the MMO about that. Okay, we'll move on now. We normally have present with us the chairs of the Harbour Consultative Group minutes. For those who haven't been before, each of the 3 harbours has a consultative group. Weymouth meet 4 times a year, and West Bay and Lyme Regis meet twice a year. Unfortunately, Andy Sargent, the chair of the Weymouth one, who met on the 16th of August, can't be present, but Ed Carter, the Harbour Master, is just going to give a very brief synopsis of that. And if there are any questions, I'm sure Ed or I, because I was there as well, we can answer that.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, members. Ed Carter, Weymouth Harbour Master. Yes, thank you. The recent consultative group for Weymouth, a quick, easy and very pleasant meeting this summer. A couple of reports to highlight from the various representatives. The harbour traders, the commercial passenger carrying vessels and Weymouth Beach representatives all reported similar statistics for the summer, the weather very much being the common theme, keeping things much quieter at the start of the season, but with a pleasant improvement over August. The fireworks this summer have gone extremely well, thanks to the vessel and skipper that assist from Weymouth. There have been lots and lots of public involvement around the fireworks, and it's been a very well-received event. So Boatfolk Marina reported that the harbour team were assisting with a small oil spill identified from a vessel in their marina. And the Squib Nationals were reported as going extremely well over the summer. A very full week of sailing was had and enjoyed by all. The sailing club also did report that an intruder apparently tried to get into the rowing club over the summer, but luckily their alarm systems, everything were in place and took care of it all. The launch event around the Weymouth Harbour Watch was very well attended, lots of businesses and residents displaying stickers around the harbour and signing up for the Dorset Alert. We had a good coverage in the Dorset Echo for this one. We've actually held recently, in the last couple of days, a second event in our pontoons, and again, that's been very well attended by our marina customers, and various items being brought in to be marked and brought into the Dorset Alert system. Dorset Marine Police, in the last quarter, had 9 reports to highlight in the Weymouth area, 2 of suspicious persons on board boats, 3 reported thefts, 1 person reported drunk in charge of a vessel, and 3 for youth swimming and jumping into the harbour. The Dorset Marine Police would also like to reiterate that reporting any of the following is essential with any of the vessels with foreign crew, refuelling multiple times, no AIS, cash-only payments and not putting on personal details. Generally, the reports from the police for Weymouth are very, very good, reporting the lowest incidence of antisocial vessel use across the summer. The RNLI were happy to report that their lifeboat week raised just under £7,000 and was a success, even though the weather resulted in the Bowleys evening being cancelled. Other events were very well attended. The lifeboat itself has been very busy, with shouts up and down the coast, very busy with the Fastnet race, 6 incidents attended during that one event. And various other little bits and pieces, vessels with fractured mast, paddleboarder rescues, that sort of thing. A brief run through there, but if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed, for standing in. I should have mentioned that I had a very enjoyable, if slightly bumpy day out with the sailing club during one of the squib racing days. I think it was about a 4-6, and it was quite interesting. And I think the sailing club were quite surprised that I remained full colour and didn't turn green on that day. We have online Nick Marks, who chairs the Lyme Regis Consultative Group. haven't had their meeting is next week, but I don't know if you would like to do a quick update, Nick, on Lyme Regis.
Thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon, everybody. Not much of an update, really. We've had a fairly busy summer in the harbour, although as Weymouth, we've been heavily affected by the weather. Notable events, we also had a fairly large sailing event in Lyme Regis. It's at the OK World Championships, where 147 boats took part over a week's sailing, and that went very well. They had a good sail, and we're very. The sailing club is very conscious that this type of activity affects the other harbour users, and we are very grateful for the common sense shown and the pragmatism shown throughout the week. We also had a RNLI lifeboat week, and we raised £33,000 for our week, but we're not bragging.
Thank you very much, Nick, and thanks for attending. Are there any questions from any of the committee for Nick? No? Good. Thank you. Our role is to receive the minutes, which we have done. Now we have the Harbour Master updates. So we'll start with James Radcliffe, Harbour Master for Bridport West Bay and Lyme Regis. James.
Thank you, Chair. So we're starting off with the stats for Bridport. Our season tickets have seen an increase since this time last year, but our day launches are down. This seems to be down to the weather that we had in July and August. So many weekends were blown out and not much boating activity was taking place. Our boat lifts look low, but this is just down to the time of year when boats were put in and invoicing was done. So a lot of it was done pre-April the 1st. Our quayside parking has seen an increase from this time last year, but it's was expected to be higher than it is at the moment, but this, again, down to the weather in July and August. The shop has seen an increase since this time last year, and we intend to do some winter promotions to keep it going and to make up for any shortfall that may happen due to the boat repairs position that is currently vacant. Mooring allocations is slightly down compared to this time last year, and although we have vessels on the waiting list, they're not. Some of them aren't suitable for the size of the moorings that are available. Mooring occupancy for private is 96% and it's down to 69% for commercial. For Lyme Regis, the season tickets have increased since last year, but again the day launches are down, and the day launch is down due to the weather. The visiting boat nights, again, are down. Not many nights being taken up during July and August. The quayside parking has seen an increase with the new ANPR system that was installed. So on the figure actually shown in the stats, we can look at adding about 7.5k to that figure of new income from that system. The shop is performing well and is up on this time last year. And the mooring allocation is actually up compared to last year with, again, vessels on the waiting list waiting for larger moorings. So mooring occupancy for private is 93% and 92% for commercial. Staff training. So staff have completed sea survival courses, VHF and powerboat level 2 courses. And the future courses we've got planned at the 3-day Harbour Master course and the day skipper and first aid. Our consultative groups met in March, which was reported at the last meeting in June. Any actions on those reports are being worked through, and our next meetings are planned to take place in October for both harbours. With our harbour provision order, any concerns raised from the consultation have now been responded to and resolved, and we're waiting to hear back from the MMO. And at this time, we don't have a timescale for that. Pilotage review. We've conducted a pilotage review, which is on our there's a paper later on in the agenda to cover that. And for our harbour works, for both harbours, we're working alongside the engineers for dredging both harbours and beach replenishment. So we're planning to hopefully do that all before Easter, although that is early next year. Asset management plan and business plans. Both harbours are currently working on their business plans, which will incorporate the asset management plan, and the plan is to bring that to the November committee. The Lyme Regis storage building. Unfortunately, we're still waiting for the national grid to move the pole that is preventing us from starting the actual works of building the building. But we have gone in, contractors were on site on the 4th of September and began some of the groundworks. We're still hoping to be completed by April, but we are waiting for a date from National Grid when this pole can be moved. Our slipway parking, as reported with the stats, went live on the 1st of July, the ANPR system, and it's proven to be a good system that we've put in there. The high wall at the Cobb Lyme Regis was closed for a period, and with works and monitoring that went on, was managed to be reopened in time for the main summer holidays. App report, the quay wall. The quay wall still being monitored, and plans are being put in place to replace this. And there'll be more on this from with the FSERM update. We have some planned works report with just in front of the George Hotel area, in front of the kiosk. There's highways are doing some new road work layouts. Since COVID, the road was put into a one-way system to allow queuing at the kiosk. Safety and distance, but this is now going to go back to being two-way, but a pavement being installed in front of the kiosk and part of the island being taken away to allow the road to stay two-way. This should be starting after the October half-term. Our Port Marine Safety Code, as the Chair's mentioned, we have James Hannon here from the ABB MER, who will be doing his report later on regarding our audit. On our aids to navigation, we've had no failures since our last reporting. And many of our events at both harbours went ahead. We saw the gig Gatto cancelled due to the weather, but otherwise all the other events have been gone ahead and been well attended. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, James. Are there any questions or comments for James? Yes, Councillor Bryan.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm Councillor Bryan, portfolio holder for Highways, Travel, Environment, Harbours, Climate Change. I'm not sure what else, but it's a new day today, so who knows. Can I ask that any work we're doing in any of the harbours, we try and limit the work within the tourist season? We have this discussion regularly, so I just want to register it again for the coming year. Any harbour works does actually affect the facilities of the kiosks and also the hotels. So I would ask that we try and keep it outside of their main season. And I'm getting a nod from Matt, so I'm happy with that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ray Bryan. I think it's been noted. Thank you. Any other points? No, if not, we'll now move on to the Weymouth Harbour report. And this is Harbour Master Ed Carter, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The report from Weymouth Harbour. Marina berths, interest in recreational berths remains very strong. The Letivar Marina this season peaking less than a percentage point behind the 2022 season when compared to the same period. Very similar to Bridport and Lyme, we're holding a significant waiting list for vessels requiring larger berths, still remaining very popular. Vessels in the smaller category, however, predominantly 6 metres and below, demand is consequently very low in that area with vessels being sold, and this is where our vacancies remain. Commercial berths in Weymouth are also at almost 100% let, with the remaining spaces being less popular due to access issues. We've got some on the midstream pontoon, or we do have a couple of smaller berths that aren't suitable, particularly for the vessels that we currently hold on our waiting list. Commercial operators, again, reporting very much the same pressures from bad weather as the land-based businesses. However, many of the vessels have seen a noticeable increase during the last month, and the harbour in general has seen a steady flow of charter, pleasure trip and commercial fishing traffic throughout the season. The Weymouth Harbour statistics really highlight, the pressures that have been seen this season. The unpredictable weather at the start of the season, brief respite in June, has remained a consistent theme. And while there have been many sunny days, it's often accompanied by extremely strong winds, which is really keeping boating, certainly recreational boating, at a very low ebb. During August, as the weather improved, the number of visitors overall did show to be above this August when compared to last year, which really does show that when the conditions are right, the business is definitely around and people are out there boating and making the most of it wherever they can. While the start of September has been very warm, it is predicted to go cooler towards the end of this season. I think we could all see the change in the weather today. We've seen a general reduction in the number of jet skis, PWCs, small speedboat users this year. In this area, it is hard to know whether it's the weather keeping people away or whether the general move across the UK to tackle antisocial vessel use. Certainly the police in Dorset, initiatives such as Operation Seagoing, Operation Seabird, have been having an effect on antisocial vessel use. And again, with bringing PWCs officially as vessels underneath the collision regulations is definitely helping. I'll discuss with my colleagues in harbours across the southwest at the autumn meetings to see what sort of reports other harbours are having and whether they're seeing a similar downturn in activity. One other thing to highlight from the statistics is an apparent downturn in the number of visiting fishing vessels this year. The pressures on the UK fishing industry are widely acknowledged. The departure from the European Union, the common fisheries policy, leading to significant and continued challenges in fishing rights, catch quotas and access to the EU markets, combined with rising fuel costs, maintenance expenses, regulatory compliance and this sort of thing, is making profitability for all vessels a constant concern. Taken in the short term, the drop in numbers does seem a bit of a bleak outlook. However, when you look back at data over the last 22 years, there have been other periods of very steep decline in visiting fishing vessels to this area. In chatting briefly with the representative for fishermen in Weymouth, there have been known times in the past, I think 2012 was certainly one, the gentleman I spoke to could remember, when a distinct drop in catch was responsible for quite a decline that season. I will be chatting to him some more, though, to try and understand these figures more in more depth. Certainly, with the new fish landing quay at Weymouth scheduled to be completed by the start of the 2024 season, with work going on this winter, we're really hoping that the improved facilities are going to attract an increasing number of visiting fishing vessels, being able to land catch in Weymouth and then have access to the wider UK markets from there, as well as providing continued support for our resident commercial fleet. Incidents within the last quarter. The harbour team have recorded, at the time of writing these papers, 87 incidents, including life rings thrown into the harbour, fishing nets in the bathing area, various jumping into the harbour from the pier, town bridge, minor collisions, camping underneath the pleasure pier, unbelievably, vessels out of fuel, debris in the water, reports of fly tipping, missing persons, and various minor injuries. In the last 2 weeks, it is worth highlighting that 2 separate incidents of persons falling from the harbour walls on the south side of the harbour have been attended by harbour staff. And we are currently working through our investigations, and we're liaising with and reviewing the incidents with our health and safety colleagues. Work is ongoing to streamline and standardise our incident reporting systems, the goal being to capture 100% of incidents that occur within the harbour, providing a lot more clear and constructive data into which we can analyse the data, identify trends, and to really strengthen the feedback loop into our port safety management and risk management systems. We've already streamlined the incident reporting system on our website, making it much easier for the public to report incidents and defects. The data from our website, which is also used by our staff to record incidents, is collated automatically, and I'm hoping to include some more analysis and some better data for future updates of the Harbours Committee. Powers of General Direction. The consultation on the Weymouth Harbour General Directions was held over 6 weeks from June to August, in compliance with Section 22 of the Weymouth Harbour Revision Order. Where 2 statutory consultees are identified in the Harbour Revision Order, one being the Chamber of Shipping, the second the Royal Yachting Association. On the 28th of July, the RYA contacted us requesting an extension due to the letter that was sent to them taking quite a while to get to the relevant person. We did grant a 2-week extension to the RYA, and they did submit a response on the 23rd of August. On the 29th of August, the letter that was sent to the Chamber of Shipping was returned to the Harbour Office unopened, very unexpectedly. As they are a named statutory consultee, I have been in direct contact with the Chamber of Shipping now. They are in receipt of our general directions and they're formulating a response. We're required under the Harbour Revision Order with the statutory consultees to ensure that any of their concerns are looked at and responded to appropriately, and we'll be looking to seek in writing from both of the organisations that anything that they raised has been addressed. We're hoping to bring a full report on all the responses to the consultation to the Harbours Committee in November. Oil spills and response in the last quarter. I'm happy to report very quiet on this front. 2 small rainbow slicks of light fuel oil reported in the inner harbour during August. The first was very quickly identified as a recreational vessel that had discharged a small quantity of bilge water with spilt fuel. The second, although a very narrow slick, was longer and more extensive from the town bridge to Weymouth Marina, and a source could not be identified at the time. As with the vast majority of light fuel spills, especially in hot weather, the slicks broke up and evaporated extremely quickly, and while the incidents were monitored, no containment action was required in these cases. The harbour works highlighted in the next section are all under Strategic Goal 1 of the Harbour Strategy to maintain safe working harbours and provide high-quality infrastructure and facilities, and the next harbour works are all being carried out in pursuit of this goal. The installation of the new visitor pontoons has been completed. We have, across the season, had a small number of reports where the integral black fendering on the sides of the pontoons was leaving marks on the fenders and hulls of some visiting vessels. We explored quite a few options to mitigate these issues, cleaning the material and various bits and pieces. Further to extensive discussions with the installer and the manufacturer, we've taken the decision to replace the black rubber fendering with a grey type of synthetic rubber that doesn't cause marking. The replacement is currently being carried out and will be complete well in advance of next season. In the interim, advice to visiting vessels has been published on our website and is also given at the time of booking a berth, and we're providing fender sleeves for any vessel that wishes to use them. The temporary 24-hour access fishing compound within the commercial area that was created this year has proven extremely popular and is being used at full capacity by the local fishermen. The use of the storage area is helping us to inform decisions for new areas planned in the Key Regeneration project. And again, the assistance we're able to give here really helps to strengthen relationships with our stakeholders in the commercial fishing community. Within the storage area, a facility has been created in partnership with the Weymouth and Portland Marine Litter Project, where fishermen can leave their plastic waste, old nets, buoys, fish boxes and things, to be sorted and taken for recycling. The facility is also being used to capacity, and volunteers from the Weymouth and Portland Marine Litter Project, they also go out and collect litter from the beaches from Ringstead down to Chesil, I believe. And this is providing a really valuable aid to the excellent work being carried out by those volunteers by having this hub at Weymouth where these things can be collated. The Weymouth Pleasure Pier, as advised at the last meeting, railing replacement was carried out over the summer. Apart from one small section, which is due to be completed in the next couple of weeks, the rest of the old railings have been removed, the new ones installed, and along with new current health and safety standard compliant signage has been put around the pier, warning of the prohibition and the hazards presented by jumping from the pier. Issues with antisocial behaviour at the pier have continued during the summer, providing a big strain on the resources for the community safety team, the police and the Harbours team. A proposal is being put forward to install a security gate and a fence across the pier to control access and enhance public safety. The proposal was considered at the August meeting of the Harbour Consultative Group and no negative comments or concerns were received. A copy of the proposal is included at Annex 1 of this report for members of this committee to note. We are now looking to go out to tender to produce a fully designed and costed solution to the proposal, and it's hoped the installation will be complete ahead of the 2024 season. Further maintenance works to the town bridge are planned to begin in the last week of September and continue until the end of November. During this period, weekday lifts for the town bridge will be limited to 3 per day, with only one leaf of the bridge being raised at midday, and vessels are being required to confirm if they require a bridge lift by 4 p.m. the previous day in order that we don't affect works unduly. Once the repair works have been completed to the second leaf of the bridge this year, the plan is also to resurface the bridge once this is all completed. Moving on to our commercial port berths, Victory, the last remaining tug of the Griffith Torrens fleet, was confirmed sold in April. The vessel has now actually departed the harbour, so we're just working through the last tidying up on that berth. So the remaining, we have Kingston, a tug owned by Aquatic Towage, and still MV Denham being the two boats that are permanent berths on the commercial port areas. However, we're still seeing regular visits from the Channel Chieftain boats as well. We've also got a lot of interest in winter berthing, we're hoping, with them. Larger Navy and Border Force vessels are also using berth 1 during the summer months to keep space on our visitor pontoons for visiting vessels. A seagrass survey in the Weymouth Bay was carried out by the Environment Agency during July. The survey is intended to map the extent of the seagrass beds to ascertain the health of the habitat. We're hoping for the results of the survey to be shared with us, which is expected to be February 2024. So hopefully I'll bring a report to the committee once I have those results. A couple of final things to mention. The second tall ship to visit us this summer was the Now Victoria. Visited Weymouth for a week at the end of June. While the vessel did prove popular, the numbers weren't as high as for the visit of El Galleon in May, possibly partly down to the weather. It was not nearly as nice at the end of June as it was in May. Berthing these vessels on the new Alpha pontoon has proved extremely successful. The space lends itself very well to displaying vessels of this kind, provides a safe and accessible area for the public, and we hope to be able to welcome tall ships again to Weymouth in future. No acts of pilotage have taken place during this last reporting period. And any upcoming events relevant to harbour operations, there was the Weymouth Rowing Club gig event planned, was rescheduled for October, but unfortunately they have decided no longer to go ahead with that. So we do, now we've had the Seafood Festival and Weymouth, the Iron Man has all gone past. There are no other big events that we know of planned for the rest of the season. Thank you very much. That's the end of my report. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Ed. Any points or questions? Yes, Lee Hardy.
Paragraph 2.2 of the report. And if I recall correctly, a bit of effort went in earlier this year to installing railings along the harbour edge to stop people falling. But it appears people are still falling. I think there were 2 incidents here. So is that a case of it's a different area completely which needs to be looked at, or is it the measures that have been put in place aren't working as intended?
I think it's a different area. Ed, could you confirm where these incidents were in relation to the railings that are installed?
Yeah, thank you for your question, Mr. Hardy. So yes, the 2 recent incidents have both occurred on the south side of the harbour, one adjacent to the Trinity Road pontoon, one adjacent to the pontoon in the Cove. In both of those areas, there are currently no railings along that side of the harbour. When there was a portion of work conducted on the north side along Customs House Quay a few years ago, the work was done on that side. It was deemed at the time that primarily due to the lower flow of traffic on the south side of the harbour, the same work wasn't carried out. However, as I say, we are working with our health and safety colleagues to investigate, and any recommendations that they'll bring forward, we'll review and take such action as is required. Thank you.
Do you want to follow, or are you happy with that response?
No, it's quite clear. But clearly, it's identified, and if we had a problem in one area, and we now have another problem in the other area, does the same action need to be taken? I think it's something that needs to be considered and perhaps brought into a plan.
Yes, I think as Ed mentioned, we're having the health and safety reports, and we'll be looking at what action, if any, is needed. Thank you. Any other points? Yes, Councillor Brian Ray.
That's better. Don't like the formalities. Forget who I am. 2 points. First of all, can I congratulate the Harbour team on the way they worked very closely with the Seafood Festival and also Ironman. We mustn't forget that this is a major benefit to the local economy, and I'm looking forward to receiving some data as to how the local economy benefited. I would also, and the question has been raised about the area on the other side of the water to Custom House Quay. Yes, we had a public member falling into the water. And I've got to say this was reported to me, within a few minutes of us becoming aware, which is the responsibility of the harbour masters to let me know. But it was reported to me within minutes. So again, thanks, Ed, for responding so quickly and keeping me informed. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I do believe the Seafood Festival, I know they were in social media saying that there were very few tickets to book, and I gather that a large number of people turned up and paid on the day. So I think it's been they were blessed with probably one of the best weekends weather. I think the Ironman suffered a little bit. I think parts of it, I think the swim may have had to be curtailed or cancelled. Yeah. Thank you. If there's no further points, thank you very much, Ed. Are you going to, is the Pleasure Pier report for noting only, or are you going to have a very brief introduction to that?
Thank you, Chairman. The report is mainly for members to note. Thank you. It's an operational issue, particularly. As I say, we've discussed it with the consultative group, and as there were no concerns raised, I'm happy to answer questions. But of course, if any members have anything they'd like to discuss, I'm available any time, of course.
Thank you. It's a very comprehensive report with it looks very sensible proposals. So I'm sure the operational team will take note of that. But thank you for including it. It's been very useful for members. We move on to,
which is slightly broader than the report, but it comes up in the report around the proposed control of access. It is reported that there is sexual assault and violence happening in that area. That is criminal activity. That is beyond disruptive behaviour or antisocial behaviour. It is pure criminal activity. If it's happening on our patch, then we need to be concerned about that, I would suggest.
I think that's a very valid point. Ed, I know that you are in constant communication with the police force. Would you like to just give a slight update on that? Thank you.
Certainly, thank you. Yes, prior to writing this proposal, I've spent quite a lot of time speaking to the community safety team, representatives from the Dorset Police, and also with the targeted youth workers of Dorset Council. The points that Mr. Hardy is referring to, I believe, are those points that were raised in particular there. The report from the targeted youth worker was we did ask her directly about the key, but about the pier, and yes, there are those occurrences are reported to her. Now, it's quite important to stress that the targeted youth workers have a very specific role. They are really working very hard within the community, and they're quite often able to get information from the younger people in the community that they possibly wouldn't be willing and aren't willing to pass on to the police. So there are no particular figures surrounding this, but this is again the information coming from a targeted youth worker of many years' experience. Unfortunately, I think what she is hearing and is being reported to her is happening at various locations. But yes, I do agree with Mr. Hardy that we know these things are happening, and we're not looking to we're not looking at this purely from the kind of jumping into the harbour point of view, but really trying to have the wider safety of the public and all visitors to the harbour in mind.
Thanks, Ed. Would you like to come back on that, Lee?
The harbour authorities are being placed in an invidious position here. There is report, according to this, and this is all I know, there is a report of sexual assault happening on our patch, and it is not being taken further. Now we know about it. Now we as a group know it. Now our duty holder knows about it. We can't ignore it. And I don't think we would want to ignore it either, if that is the case.
I think possibly we have to distinguish between activity that's been reported to the police and hearsay to the Dorset Council social worker. There is probably a legal distinction between that and what the police can act on, but I think we need to be very aware, and it's something also that perhaps we need our comms teams to be looking at and being briefed, because it's a reputational risk as well as an actual risk to the youngsters involved. So thanks for raising that.
Be very clear, every report of a crime is hearsay until it's investigated and is taken to a conclusion. And I think sexual assault carries a maximum sentence of 10 years imprisonment. This is not trivial, and I think that as a Harbours group, we need to be very, very conscious of this.
I think that I will investigate the escalation of this to appropriate bodies and parties, both within the council and within the police with the Harbour team.
Very much. And I make the point, it's only because I've read it in this report. I have no other knowledge of this at all.
Thank you. It's very valid, and thanks for raising it. Okay, if there's no further points on the item 7, the Harbour Master updates, we move on to the budget monitoring report, item 8. And as usual now, our format is that we start alphabetically. So I think it will be over to James for the budget monitoring report for Bridport and Lyme Regis to start, and then over to Claire for Weymouth.
Thank you, Chair. So the budget monitoring for Bridport, the expected expenditure is 96,000 adverse, and this is made up of internal charges relating to management fee from car parks. The supplies and services is mainly down to the cost of 1.5 dredges. So we dredged March, April this year already, so half the cost has gone into this year's finance, and we're expecting to dredge again in March 24, so it falls into the same year. And there's a shortfall from the boat repair post that is vacant at the moment. For the income, it's expected to be 119,000 favourable. This is mainly down to surplus income from the HRO car parks and with the new Tier 3 charges around the harbour, and the and just the harbour use. So, and then for report, the budgeted transfer to reserves is expected to be 101,000. So for Lyme Regis, the expenditure overall is 23,000 adverse, and the main one for this is the cost of the AMPR system and the overspend on the contractor's budget. For the income, it's expected to be 52,000 favourable, and this is down to a range of income streams, mooring fees, boat storage, the car parking, and licences from rents and concessions. There's no transfer to reserve for Lyme. However, because it's still budgeted, supported from DC, there will be 29,000 being returned back to DC. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, James. On the engineering side, is that a seasonal appointment, or are you looking for a full-time replacement there?
That would be a full-time boat repairs mechanic again, yeah.
Thank you. Any other points for James? If not, we'll move over to Claire now, our finance manager for Weymouth. Claire.
Thank you, Chair. So we're presenting our predictions for the 2023 budget as at the end of July. Budget forecasts are given at Appendix 3. The current predictions for the Weymouth Harbour operational budget are that our budgeted surplus will reduce from 185,000 to 178,000. Current predictions regarding income from harbour-owned car parks is showing a favourable position of £39,000. All surpluses are transferred into the reserve at year-end, and the forecasted year-end reserve balance is currently likely to be at 2.5 million. Overall this year, income is expected to be lower than the original budget. Reasons for this are reduced income from commercial berthing. Again, as Ed reported, Griffin Towage went into administration, and only one out of the 2 tugs will remain permanently berthed in Weymouth. And this is excuse me, being operated by Aquatic Towage and Marine. Income from pallet storage is reduced. We've rationalised all our space in the commercial area, so all these sort of overspills that were previously charged for are now contained, and therefore there's a bit less income in that area. As reported in the Harbour Master's report, The season started off a bit slow, so there is reduced income from both visiting commercial and recreational vessels this year. On the plus side, income from annual marina berths remains on track. We're still getting new inquiries coming in for both annual and temporary and winter berthing. There is expected to be an underspend on costs this year, although our insurance and energy costs are expected to be over budget. This has been offset by underspends on business rates and some savings against seasonal staffing. Paragraph 3.6 says a list of projects from the asset management plan that we're due to complete this year. These include any projects that have been carried forward from 2022. That concludes my report. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Claire. Are there any questions for Claire on the Weymouth budget update? No? Thank you very much. We have the recommendations that we're noting the current budget monitoring figures for 23-24 for all three harbours. Is everybody content that we are noting those at committee level? Thank you. Item 9 is the flood and coastal erosion risk management, the engineering update, and we look to Matthew Penny, who leads on this, to give us his report. Please, Matt.
Thank you, Chair. If I can start at Bridport Harbour. As you know, the dredging operations were successfully completed this year, and we're already in discussion with contractors around next year's operations, and that's in conjunction with the Harbour Master, so planning is well underway for that. The inspections for this year have been completed. We noticed some minor defects to the harbour area, and they're scheduled for repair. The repairs themselves, the most notable ones around Harbour Wall A, and I've got a map in the appendices to this report. So when I'm referencing walls, you can reference that document. But we've noticed that Wall A requires some. They're showing signs of settlement, and therefore engineers are actively monitoring the wall to see what rate of settlement and indeed if there's any movement in that wall. The Harbour Wall A, as it is included within the current council capital programme. So we're just seeing if that's still appropriate, and the surveying and monitoring will inform that process. Harbour Wall B, the stabilisation repair works, which is a standing item, updating committee on. We've been in discussions with the conservation teams and obviously working with designers to progress that. We had partially opened the walkway, as the report states, and it's part of a business case being taken forward to council as part of the capital programme. However, I've got a verbal update on this wall, very recent actually, that we've had to close the walkway now because very recently it's shown increased movement. The wall itself has shown increased movement, which is something we're investigating, and what those implications are and what measures are required. So I can't give you more of an update than that at the moment, but we have seen increased movement, and therefore, due to health and safety, we've taken a decision to close that walkway, whereas it was partially reopened. We're basically in discussion with properties and the harbour teams around this, as well as our structural engineering consultants, and we'll be looking to progress it ASAP. So that's a very recent update for the committee. Lyme Regis Harbour, again, much like Bridport, in discussions with contractors, and we'll be looking to progress those alongside the Bridport Harbour operations, as we normally do. Inspections have also been completed for this year, and defects identified in and around the harbour. It being the structure that it is and very old, it's a continual battle against those minor repairs and maintenance requirements, being ancient structures. Repairs-wise, The Harbour Master has referenced the high wall walkway, and that has been repaired sufficiently and reopened. We recommended to the Harbour Master that it reopened, and he agreed with that. But we continue to monitor the cob and the other structures around the harbour. The Phase 5 scheme, as you know, construction is scheduled to start late summer 2025 now. That will allow us to carry out additional investigation and design changes and incorporate the licensing application timelines, which are always quite lengthy for works of this type. I do have a verbal update for the committee, which centres around the funding shortfall that we're experiencing for the scheme. The original scheme was budgeted for £3 million, which was largely Environment Agency funding, with some council funding as well. However, the inflationary pressures and rising costs and construction works that we're experiencing, the budget is no longer sufficient to carry out the work as originally planned. It's now expected that the scheme will cost a minimum of £4.5 million to deliver. This obviously places great pressure on the project in general, and raises with it questions around the external funding requirements, which obviously we have certain stipulations that we must meet in standard protection terms, etc., standard of defence. The projects team are drawing up a range of additional funding options, so potential funding options that we can approach in order to bridge that gap, bridge that shortfall, and we remain committed to delivering the project. However, it's not currently known at this present stage, because we're investigating those, whether that will mean a significant delay to the project or indeed a reduced scope. I can't update the committee more at this point, but I will do in future meetings. A press release, last thing to note regarding the scheme, a press release along the lines of what I've just updated the committee on will be released later today to the public and the press to update them as well. Weymouth, I've moved on to Weymouth Harbour. Nothing to note regarding dredging for this year, but we remain able to support the harbour team should they require it. And we've completed an annual round of inspections like the other two harbours, and defects have been identified and scheduled appropriately. Repairs, again, are part of that scheduled repair process. Item D there, Weymouth Flood and Coastal Erosion Risk Management Scheme Phase 1. Says the committee is aware the outline business case is programmed for completion in late 2024. I'm pleased to say that £500,000 local levy funding bid was approved by the Wessex Regional Flooding Coastal Committee. So that has allowed us to incorporate surface water now into the scope of the scheme, which is a component of flood risk that was missing. So that will hopefully help us to model, optioneer and produce preliminary designs for the surface water issues that we get within Weymouth in general, but around the harbour as well, which relates to the responsibilities of this committee. Early contractor involvement, pricing and programming of coastal options are being finalised, and I'm pleased to say that the second round of stakeholder engagement was completed, with more events planned in future. These current second round of events had mixed levels of attendances, but by those that did attend, it was generally received positively by all. Harbour walls F and G, which are the peninsula walls that are looking to be replaced. I've got a verbal update to what I've written in the report. An option has thankfully now been chosen, which keeps us on programme at the moment, and a detailed design is now underway for those walls, so that is good progress. Harbour Wall 4, the main update I have for that, on top of the, in addition to the report, was that earlier this month, Cabinet approved the appointment of the contractor for Harbour Wall 4. Hanson Contracting was appointed, and will continue to work with us. They were our early contractor involvement contractors, if you like, with a view to appoint them permanently for the works, and we got that approval. So we're hoping to take that project now forward at speed. We're hopefully starting later this year, if not in the early new year in construction terms. The Pleasure Pier work was commenced in August, and Weymouth Strategic Flood Risk Assessment Level 2 has been completed, but we aren't yet at the point where we can publish its results and the implications for Weymouth and the harbour surrounds in general. So we will be looking to publish that as soon as we can, but that is, because the type of document it is, it's a decision that has to be taken with the Environment Agency and our planning colleagues, so it's not a full decision for ourselves. And that's the extent of my report, Chair.
Thank you very much, Matt. It's a relief to know in Lyme Regis that the COB was open in time for the main summer holidays for the repairs, but slightly concerned that the rise in costs may mean that we have to trim back the scale of our improvements. And for a historic sort of facility like the COB, that's rather worrying, because I imagine that the plan was very comprehensive in order to preserve it for a designated period, and any scaling back might affect that. And also just in West Bay, where you've now completely closed the footpath, the access to the food outlets is still open, isn't it?
That's correct.
But the scale, I suppose, will depend on the Environment Agency as well, won't it? On the Environment Agency board approving a revised. And I understand that most of the projects that they're dealing with have all seen a similar rise in contractors and material costs.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, the industry's under great pressure in general, and the sector, the flood and coastal erosion risk sector, has seen sharp increase in prices, and this project is suffering like many others are. For West Bay, we rely less on the Environment Agency. That project will be largely council funded, although we will have to seek approval for them for works. For the Lyme Regis works, yeah, very much the significant bulk of the funding is from the Environment Agency. So we've got certain funding stipulations that we must meet with respect to what that money will provide in standard of defence terms, etc.
Thank you. Any points from any members? Yes, Councillor Sarah Williams. Sarah.
Thank you. Just a couple of points on Harbour Wall B. You mentioned that there's been further slippage on the wall that's been investigated. Is this going to delay the work starting at all? Because you've got works going to start autumn, winter 23, and it's
potentially, as I say, we're still investigating it. There's also the potential, depending on the extent of it, that we may have to bring them forward. I just can't comment with accuracy at this moment in time, so I don't want to put my colours to the mast.
Yes, of course, Sarah.
Yeah. Well, if I ask two questions, have the conversations with the Conservation and Planning Department already taken place? That's one question. And the other question is regarding the harbour toilets. Is that work going to be done at the same time as the wall? Because there's obviously the issue of the toilets on Fisherman's Green they're not the best, offering the best service that Dorset Council could offer.
Yeah, the toilets, we would intend to rectify that at the same time. It makes sense because it is due to drainage issues, so we rectify that. Planning and conservation have been consulted initially as part of the project development process. We won't consult them again until after this investigation has occurred, and then we know what we're talking about with respect to timelines, etc. So there'll be another round of consultation, maybe potential urgent consultation, but yeah, we have discussed the initial problem with them.
Going to say it'd be very important to make sure the comms are out saying that those toilets will be done at the same time, because I think that's what more people in West Bay are worried about. That's all.
Yes, actually, if the works are going to be brought forward, I think that's good news too, which we may need to the comms to issue a note about that. Okay, thank you very much. Any other points for Matt Penny? No, thank you. Next, we move on to item 10, the Marine Safety Plan, and Ken Buchan, the Head of Environment and Wellbeing for Dorset Council, will lead on this. Ken.
Thank you, Chairman. Just briefly, really, this is a recurring report for spring and autumn Harbour Advisory Committee meetings to review where we are with the Marine Safety Plan objectives. Updates for this report are just the ongoing reporting of incidents at the harbours, and these are included in the Harbour Master updates. Incidents have also continued to be reported to the duty holder when they've occurred, as Ray alluded to earlier, and any updates to the safety management system actioned if indeed necessary. Objective 4 is to do with the review of the Bridport and Lyme Regis Competent Harbour Authority status, and this is being presented today by James a little later on in the agenda. And then objective 5 within the review is the review of the general directions at Weymouth. As Ed has covered in his report, consultation has taken place and a full analysis of the responses will be reported at the next committee meeting. With regard to the general directions for Bridport and Lyme Regis harbours, objective 6, this will start following the harbour revision orders for these harbours coming into effect. And that's an update from myself, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ken. Are there any? Yes, Richard.
Yeah, two things. I really welcome the work that Ed's been doing on the development of the incident reporting. I think it's quite an important piece of work that perhaps ought to be reflected at the committee and the duty holder level. And I would suggest we ought to have an objective, a plan objective in the Safety Marine Plan, and just recognising that work is going ahead. So it's visible at this committee level and the duty holder level, because it will enhance our understanding of the metrics and the trend reporting. And just to note, we'll hear in a minute the audit report, but I'm assuming the completion of the audit findings will go as an objective in this plan as well, as we had done previously.
Ken, could you just acknowledge that?
Yes, I agree, and we will action accordingly. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other points for Ken Buchan on the safety update? Thank you. We go now back to James Radcliffe, Harbour Master for Bridport, for the pilotage review. James.
Thank you, Chair. So the pilotage review for Bridport and Lyme Regis. So Bridport and Lyme Regis Harbour Authorities are competent harbour authorities. Within the meaning of the Pilotage Act of 1987, it states that each competent harbour authority shall keep under consideration whether any, and if so, what pilotage service need to be provided to secure the safety of ships navigating in or near the approaches to its harbour. Dorset Council, so Bridport and Lyme Harbours, have contacted ABP MER to do a review of the pilotage provisions of Bridport and Lyme Regis Harbours and to assess the requirement for pilotage in order to determine whether a pilotage function removal order would be beneficial. Currently, Bridport and Lyme do not operate as a competent harbour authority under the requirements of the 1987 Pilotage Act. So considering the current and expected future traffic profile of Bridport and Lyme Harbours and the results of the formal navigation and risk assessment, the following recommendations are made for Bridport and Lyme Regis Harbour, and it's to commence the process of removing the Harbour Authority's pilotage functions as provided under the Marine Navigation Act 2013. The reasons for this requirement is there has been no pilotage services at Bridport and Lyme Regis for many years, and both harbours have changed significantly to small commercial and leisure traffic use. It's been noted that there has been no pilot requests for approximately 40 years at Bridport and over 50 years at Lyme Regis. And the fact that no pilotage acts have been carried out over these years has meant that the Harbour Authority is now unable to meet the obligations of the Pilotage Act of 1987 and the recommendations of the Port Marine Safety Code in respect of pilotage, and that the service should now be removed. The types of vessel visiting the harbour are now predominantly smaller, and the fishing and leisure crafts, which are all below 50 metres in length, and that's the threshold set for the mandatory pilotage. In accordance with the statutory obligations to keep pilotage service under review, the Council has taken a comprehensive review of its port navigational risk assessments and completed a pilotage service review, which included a review of the current documentation on relevant national and local legislation. A risk assessment determined the continued need for pilotage service and analysis of the methods and options for delivering a pilotage service. The pilotage service review concluded that the harbour is at low risk and that there were already adequate controls in place to mitigate the safe arrival and departure of vessels which now use the harbour. The harbour will make use of the harbour revision order once it's in place to formulate general directions which would become enforceable when the pilotage ceases. The harbour will continue with its duty to review the navigational risk assessments and keep under review the need for the pilotage should the traffic profile of the harbour change. The removal of the pilotage function from the competent harbour authority relieves the harbour of their powers and duties relating to the pilotage under the Act of 1987. A harbour authority from which such the functions were removed would cease as a competent harbour authority and become a statutory harbour authority. There would also be financial implications should we have to employ pilots and for the harbour. And so the recommendation is to continue with the review and remove the pilotage service. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, James. I think the report speaks for itself with 40 years and 50 years without the necessity. And of course, with West Bay, the change in the design of the harbour would also probably preclude any vessel that needed pilotage entering the harbour anymore. Any points from any members on this report? That seems members will be aware that we are going through a similar process at Weymouth, and this is really a continuation of that rationalisation of the ports, and they will, of course, change to become statutory harbour authorities if this is agreed. We have a recommendation to the portfolio holder to commence the process of removing the Harbour Authority's pilotage functions as provided for under the Marine Navigation Act 2013. Is our members content that we should recommend to the portfolio holder to begin this process? Did anyone want to comment on that? I think everybody is content. So that recommendation, oh, Richard.
Not a comment on the report. I think the report's fairly, conclusive in terms of the recommendation. Just a question on the process, just to ensure that Bridport and Lyme have the appropriate resources to do the work to close it out.
James, would you like to comment on that, please?
Yeah, we have ABP Mer on board who's done the review with us, but part of the process and that is to carry on with that for us. I mean, it won't be done until the Harbour Revision Order has gone through, though, so we'll be okay, yeah.
I hope that satisfies Richard.
No, that's fine. These processes can be bureaucratic and they're not done in isolation, so thank you.
Yes, I think we alluded to the slow progress of the Harbour Revision Order earlier, which we're in the hands of the MMO on that now. But thank you, committee. That recommendation has been approved. And now we move on to item 12, the Port Marine Safety Code Designated Persons Report. And we welcome James Hannon from ABP Mer for his first report. And I think there will be a presentation with this. So, James, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon. And good afternoon to the duty holder. Good afternoon, Ray. As you can see on the screen, it's a very short presentation just to go over my first year so far as the designated person under the Port Marine Safety Code for Dorset Council. Next slide, please, Josh. The designated person is a function that's formed from the Port Marine Safety Code, and the Port Marine Safety Code sets the UK national standard for every aspect of marine safety. The Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, they require a 3-yearly compliance statement from the duty holder, and the designated person forms an independent function that reports directly to the duty holder. As the designated person, my role is to test the effectiveness of the marine safety management system, and the assessment of this process allows me to update the duty holder who will be able to write with some degree of confidence to the MCA on a 3-yearly basis and under the compliance requirement for the code. Just to give you a bit of an update on the Port Marine Safety Code, the code in its current version is at a 2016 publication. It is well overdue an update, and the Department for Transport, who are the owners of the Port Marine Safety Code policy, have commenced a review of the Port Marine Safety Code, and that started in March this year. A draft version should have been sent out for London International Shipping Week, which was last week, and it has not materialised. So we're expecting the draft version to be imminently published. The accompanying Guide to Good Practice for Port Marine Operations will have a subsequent review, and this is expected to be completed in April 2014, although I believe that there is some delay to this document. The next UK-wide compliance exercise, this is the 3-yearly statement of compliance, is also delayed. This should be starting in October, but the MCA have stated that they will be commencing this in the first half of 2024. And this is to allow for any subtle changes, and I believe they are subtle changes, to the Port Marine Safety Code draft. So the Port Marine Safety Code activities for Dorset this year, audits for 2023 was undertaken in Bridport. This was done back in March. I actually undertook the audit. James was in attendance, and also Richard was in attendance as on an observatory nature. The outcome of the report was very good and gave me a great degree of confidence as the designated person. It was found to be fully compliant with the requirements of the code. There were 3 areas of best practice that were identified, and 12 opportunities for improvements were noted. Other activities this year that I've undertaken, I have regular meetings now with the Harbour Masters on a monthly basis and we have circulated quarterly news circulations. We also will include any other bulletins relating to marine safety as and when they happen, such as reports or recommendations for the Marine Accident Investigation Branch. So the outcomes of the audits, I'd like to focus on the good points first. So the areas of best practice, provision and maintenance of aids to navigation are seen as best practice with 100% availability across all categories of aids. Now, that's reflected into the Trinity House report that is published on an annual basis. So that is an extremely good thing to see. The second one, the hydrographic survey standard is very high and is recognised as an area of best practice with ongoing regime of surveys and promulgation of the information. And thirdly, it's brilliant to see that the Council has a consistent and measurable approach to marine safety. I'm not going to dwell on the 12 areas, but just highlight a couple of points of improvement. The duty holder had changed from the group to an individual, and the SMS at the time of the audit did not reflect this change. A suitable recording method should be put in place to record items of training that are not certified. For example, competency checks or briefings on a marine safety management system. A review of the requirement for pilotage, which we've just heard from James, to be undertaken as Bridport, because it is currently recorded by the Department for Transport as a competent harbour authority under the Pilotage Act. And as you've just heard from James, there's been a subsequent report since the audit, which has addressed that matter. Just to touch on the RAG rating, that is a list of the 10 areas which are key to being measured against the requirements of the code. Pleased to see that there is absolutely no red, and the amber are very, very, very light, say that just the 12 areas. Not all 12 areas are reflected on there, but just give you some indication of what was picked up as areas of improvement. But I'm pleased to say that it was an exceptionally good finding for this audit. So just to focus on pilotage for Bridport, as we've already heard, the pilotage review was undertaken by ABP MER. The review was conducted by Captain Darcy White, experienced mariner back in July 2023. And it concluded that there has been no pilotage for the service for the last 40 years. The inner harbour is not suited for vessels over 21 metres in length, and insufficient sea room to manoeuvre for larger vessels with no space to turn. The cost to the port, if they had to provide the pilotage service, would be substantial, where a service is not required, and it is recommended that the pilotage function is removed by DFT, and this is undertaken using a removal order. And that concludes my first annual report. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, and it's very gratifying to see that Dorset Council has safety at the top of its list, and that you've identified areas of best practice, and I'm sure that we can be reassured that the items for improvement are either completed or underway by our teams. So that was a very comprehensive report, and thank you for attending. Are there any questions from members for James? Good, very comprehensive. And thank you very much, and we look forward to, I think you'll return probably in a year's time, won't it?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, my next victim is Ed at Weymouth.
I'm sure Ed will be looking forward to working with you. Thank you very much. Item 13 is the forward plan, and back to Ken Buchan for this, please.
Thank you, Chair. There's been a few changes to the forward plans since the last Harbour Advisory Committee. In addition to our standing items, we had anticipated bringing the general directions for Weymouth Harbour to this meeting, but delays in the consultation and the need for more detailed responses to consultees means that this has had to be pushed back to the meeting in November. The Harbour business plans will now be coming to the next meeting also, and we had anticipated the asset management plans for Bridport and Lyme Regis Harbours coming to the same meeting. But this plan, we feel, should be combined with the business plans. Obviously, the asset management plan is a significant component of the business plans that will be presented. So it won't be presented separately at the next meeting. It will become part of the business plan presentation. We'll also be considering the fees and charges for 2024-25 at the November meeting, as well as the budget request for next year. So that's what we have in the forward plan at the current time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ken. Are there any comments from members? Yes, Sarah.
Just a quick question. Will we be having a sort of pre-meeting to discuss the budget for next year, as we did last year?
Yes, I think Claire has already planned that, and I'm sure you'll get notified very shortly. And it's imminent, I think. Is it? Have you got the date there?
It's the 12th of October, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, I knew it was already programmed in. So, Helen, did you want to? Was there a comment from the back, Kevin? I thought you'd raised your hand. You were just no. Okay, just in case it was a budget question. No, that's fine. If everyone's happy, we note the forward plan and the changes made. So it looks like we've got a fairly big meeting in November. We are going to look at that because I'm not quite sure how it's arisen within the calendar, but it would normally be in the first week of December. So we will have a look at that to make sure the spacing between the meetings is a little better. And I know our team are looking at that already for next year. The next item is urgent items. There are no items of urgent business. And the final item on the agenda is exempt business, and there is no exempt business today. So that does conclude the meeting. So thank you all for attending. It's been a very good meeting. We've had some very good reports. I'm delighted to welcome James Hannon and, of course, Mark, our new independent member, who, by the time of the November meeting, I hope his position will have been ratified by full council. We certainly will be proposing that it should be. So thank you for that. And that concludes the meeting. Thank you all.